She was reaching for the dropped grocery receipt when his designer shoe connected with her ribs, and in that moment of cruelty, neither of them knew that her father's signature was on his family's mortgage. Welcome back, beautiful souls. Hit subscribe and tell me where you're watching from, because tomorrow's story will absolutely shatter your heart, and you won't want to miss it. Tonight, a millionaire's son, a pregnant woman, and one cruel moment that reveals the power of a father's love. Let's begin. The marble floors of Grandview Shopping Center gleamed under the afternoon sun streaming through the glass ceiling, but Ava Thompson barely noticed the luxury around her. At 7 months pregnant, every step felt like a small victory, especially when carrying groceries that would stretch until her next paycheck. She adjusted the strap of her worn canvas bag and checked her phone, 2:47 p.m. Perfect timing to catch the 3:15 bus back to her apartment. Her hand instinctively moved to her belly as the baby kicked, a gentle reminder of why every sacrifice mattered now. "Easy there, little one," she whispered, a soft smile crossing her face. "Mommy's almost done with errands." The receipt fluttered from her fingers as she shifted the grocery bag, landing near the fountain where well-dressed shoppers sat with their designer coffee. Ava sighed and carefully began to lower herself to retrieve it. She'd need it for her budget tracking tonight. 3 floors above, in the executive offices of Whitmore Development Corp., 26-year-old Blake Whitmore was having the worst day of his privileged life. The quarterly board meeting had been a disaster. His latest real estate venture, a luxury casino project, had hit another regulatory snag, and his father's patience was wearing thin. "You're soft, Blake," his father Richard had said, ice in his voice. "You lack the killer instinct this business demands. Maybe it's time I reconsider the succession plan." Blake loosened his Hermes tie as he stepped into the elevator, his reflection showing none of the charm that usually made everything easy for him. His jaw was set tight, his blue eyes cold with frustration. He'd grown up getting everything he wanted, and the taste of potential failure was bitter on his tongue. The elevator descended toward the shopping center below. His father owned the entire complex after all. Blake pulled out his phone, scrolling through social media posts of his Harvard buddies succeeding in their careers while he struggled to prove himself. His BMW keys jingled in his palm as his frustration mounted. 26 years old and still trying to impress Daddy, he muttered to himself, the words dripping with self-loathing. Ava had managed to crouch down near the fountain, her movements careful and deliberate. The receipt had landed just out of easy reach, wedged between 2 decorative stones. She stretched forward, her pregnant belly making the simple task challenging. "Excuse me, miss. Do you need help?" An elderly woman with kind eyes had noticed her struggle. "Oh, thank you, but I've got it," Ava replied warmly, finally grasping the small piece of paper. "Just clumsy today, I suppose." As she began to rise, using the fountain's edge for support, her canvas bag shifted, and one last item tumbled out, a small container of prenatal vitamins that rolled across the polished floor. Blake emerged from the elevator at exactly that moment, his phone pressed to his ear as he barked into it. "I don't care what the zoning committee says. Find a way around it." His eyes were fixed on his destination, the exit that led to his car and away from another humiliating day. He didn't see the vitamin bottle until his designer loafer sent it skittering across the marble. He didn't see the pregnant woman slowly, carefully trying to stand. His mind was consumed with rage, with the need to assert control somewhere, anywhere. And that's when their worlds collided. What do you think happens when privilege meets vulnerability? Have you ever witnessed a moment that changed everything for someone? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how single moments can reshape entire lives. And if Blake's cruelty made your heart ache for Ava, show her some love by hitting that like button. Don't let her story go unnoticed. The collision happened in slow motion. Blake's shoulder caught Ava as she was rising from retrieving her vitamins, his momentum and distraction sending her stumbling backward. Her hand shot out instinctively to break her fall, but her pregnant belly threw off her balance. She landed hard against the fountain's marble edge, a sharp gasp escaping her lips. "Watch where you're going," Blake snapped, his phone still pressed to his ear, not even looking down at what or whom he'd hit. Ava's breath came in short bursts as she pressed her hand to her side where the marble had caught her. The baby was moving frantically inside her, as if sensing the shock. She looked up at the man towering over her, taking in his expensive suit, his cold expression, the way he was already turning to walk away. "Sir, please," she said, her voice steady despite the pain. "I think I might need—" "I don't have time for this," Blake cut her off, finally looking down. His eyes took in her appearance, the worn clothing, the canvas grocery bag, the obvious pregnancy, and something ugly flickered across his face. "Maybe next time, don't block the walkways." The words hit Ava like physical blows. Around them, other shoppers had stopped, their faces a mixture of shock and discomfort. The elderly woman who had offered to help earlier stepped forward. "Young man, that's no way to—" "Mind your own business," Blake said sharply, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd never been told no. The stress of his failed meeting, his father's disappointment, the weight of his inadequacy, it all crystallized into this moment of cruel power. Ava struggled to stand, one hand on her belly, the other gripping the fountain for support. That's when she saw it. The vitamin bottle that had started this whole encounter, now cracked open, its contents scattered across the pristine marble like tiny white pills of hope dispersed and ruined. "Those were my prenatal vitamins," she said quietly, more to herself than to him. But Blake heard, and instead of the shame that should have flooded through him, instead of the apology that any decent person would offer, something darker took hold. Maybe it was his father's voice echoing in his head about being soft. Maybe it was the way the growing crowd made him feel exposed, vulnerable. Maybe it was simply the poison of privilege unchecked for too long. "Then maybe you should be more careful," he said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "This is a high-end establishment. People like you need to—" He never finished the sentence, but the words hung in the air like smoke from a fire that would consume everything in its path. Ava's eyes filled with tears, not from physical pain, but from something much deeper. She'd felt this before, this casual cruelty, this assumption that her life mattered less because of how she looked, where she shopped, what she could afford. But carrying her child, in this moment of vulnerability, it cut deeper than ever. "People like me," she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. The crowd had grown larger now. Phone cameras were emerging. The elderly woman was shaking her head in disgust. A security guard was approaching, drawn by the commotion. Blake felt the walls closing in, every eye on him, every face showing judgment. In his world, problems were solved with money, with lawyers, with the power of the Whitmore name. But here, surrounded by witnesses to his cruelty, he felt that power slipping away. Just stay out of my way," he muttered, pushing past her toward the exit. But as he walked away, Ava's voice followed him, clear and dignified despite her tears. "I'll pray for you," she said. "I'll pray that someday you learn what it means to need kindness from a stranger." Blake's steps faltered for just a moment. Something in her tone, not angry, not vengeful, but genuinely sad for him, pierced through his armor of arrogance. But he kept walking, his designer shoes clicking against the marble, leaving behind a pregnant woman gathering scattered vitamins, and the beginning of consequences he couldn't yet imagine. The security guard reached Ava just as she managed to stand fully upright. "Ma'am, are you all right? Do you need medical attention?" "I think I'm okay," she said, though her hand remained protective over her belly. "The baby's still moving normally." "We got it all on the security cameras," the guard said quietly, his face grim, "and I think half the people here recorded it on their phones." Ava nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. Something about that young man's face in those final seconds. A flicker of something human beneath all that cruelty. She bent slowly to gather the last of her scattered vitamins, each one a small promise to the life growing inside her. She didn't know that Blake Whitmore's world was about to crumble. And Blake had no idea that the woman he'd just humiliated carried in her heart not just his child's future sibling, but the power to either destroy his family's empire or teach him the meaning of mercy. The moment was over, but its consequences were just beginning to unfold. Blake's hands trembled as he gripped the steering wheel of his BMW, the engine idling in the parking garage beneath Grandview Shopping Center. The confrontation replayed in his mind like a broken record, each loop making his stomach churn harder. The woman's face, the hurt in her eyes, the dignity in her voice even as he'd humiliated her, haunted him. "What the hell is wrong with me?" he whispered to his reflection in the rearview mirror. His phone buzzed. A text from his assistant. "The security footage from today is trending on social media. Your father wants to see you immediately." Blake's blood turned to ice. He fumbled with his phone, typing the woman's description into the search bar. Within seconds, he found it. A video titled "Millionaire's Son Attacks Pregnant Woman" already had over 50,000 views. The comments were brutal. Absolute scum. "Someone needs to humble this entitled brat. I hope she sues him for everything he's worth." Blake watched himself on screen, saw his cold expression, heard his cruel words, witnessed his callous dismissal of a pregnant woman in pain. He looked like a monster. He looked exactly like the spoiled, heartless rich boy everyone said he was. His phone rang. His father. Blake. Richard Whitmore's voice was arctic. "My office. Now." Meanwhile, in the modest one-bedroom apartment she called home, Ava sat at her small kitchen table, an ice pack pressed against her ribs. Her neighbor, Mrs. Chen, fussed over her with maternal concern. "You should go to the hospital," Mrs. Chen insisted. "Make sure the baby's okay." "I can't afford the emergency room visit," Ava said quietly. "The baby's moving fine. My breathing's normal. I think we're okay." Mrs. Chen's weathered hands gripped Ava's shoulders gently. "That young man, he should pay for what he did. You have witnesses. You have video." Ava shook her head. "What's the point? People like him, they have lawyers, money, power. People like me just get crushed trying to fight back." "Don't say that, child. You're stronger than you know." But Ava wasn't feeling strong. She was feeling the weight of every indignity she'd ever suffered. Every time someone had looked at her and seen less than human. The encounter had ripped open old wounds, memories of her teenage years in foster care, of teachers who expected less from her, of employers who passed her over. She pulled out her phone and saw the notifications flooding in. The video was everywhere. Her face, her humiliation broadcast to the world. Part of her felt vindicated. Let people see what she dealt with. But mostly she felt exposed, vulnerable in a way that made her want to disappear. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Mrs. Chen answered it, returning with a concerned expression. "There's a reporter outside," she said. "They want to interview you." Ava's heart raced. "Tell them no. I don't want to talk to anyone." "Ava, honey, maybe you should tell your side of the story." "My side?" Ava laughed bitterly. "My side is that I exist while black and pregnant and poor, and that's apparently enough to deserve cruelty. What more is there to say?" She stood up, pacing her small living room, one hand protectively over her belly. "I just want this to go away. I want to raise my baby in peace without being some symbol or victim or whatever they want to turn me into." But even as she said the words, anger began to simmer beneath her resignation. The image of Blake's cold, dismissive face flashed through her mind. His casual cruelty, his assumption that she didn't matter, that she was somehow less than human. "Maybe," she said slowly, "maybe some people need to face consequences for once." Back at Whitmore Development Corp., Blake sat across from his father's massive mahogany desk like a defendant awaiting sentencing. Richard Whitmore's office overlooked the city skyline, a testament to 3 generations of wealth and power. But today, all that power felt fragile. "Explain this to me," Richard said, his voice deadly calm as he turned his laptop screen toward Blake. The video played again, Blake's cruelty on full display. "Dad, I was having a bad day, and You were having a bad day?" Richard's composure cracked. "Do you have any idea what this has done to our reputation? Our stock price has dropped 3 points in the last hour. The mayor's office is already fielding calls. The NAACP is demanding a statement." Blake felt like he was drowning. It was an accident, It was a moment that might cost us everything. Richard slammed his hand on the desk. The Grandview Casino project. Half our investors are minority-owned businesses. You think they want to partner with a company whose heir kicks pregnant black women? I didn't kick her, Blake protested weakly. I bumped into her, and then You what? Showed compassion? Apologized? Helped her up? Richard's laugh was sharp and humorless. No, you stood there like some plantation overseer and told her she didn't belong. The comparison hit Blake like a physical blow. I'm not. You're not what? Racist? Untitled? Cruel? Richard leaned forward. Tell me, son, what exactly are you? Blake opened his mouth, but no words came. He stared at his hands, manicured and soft, hands that had never known real struggle. What was he? A trust fund baby playing at business. A man-child who took out his failures on vulnerable strangers. I don't know, he whispered finally. Richard stood and walked to the window, his back to his son. Your grandfather built this company from nothing. Came here with $30 and a dream. I've spent my life expanding what he created. And you might destroy it all in one moment of stupidity. What do you want me to do? Blake asked, desperation creeping into his voice. I want you to fix this. Make it right. Find that woman. Apologize, pay for whatever medical care she needs, make a donation to charity, whatever it takes to make this go away. Blake nodded eagerly. Yes, I can do that. Money can fix this. Richard turned around, and Blake was startled by the disappointment in his father's eyes. That's exactly the problem, Blake. You think money fixes everything. But some things require you to actually be a better person. The words hung in the air between them. As Blake realized that for the first time in his life, his father's money, his family's influence, might not be enough to save him from the consequences of who he really was. Outside the building, storm clouds were gathering over the city, and neither Blake nor Ava knew that their lives were about to become entangled in ways neither could imagine. The community health clinic on Maple Street wasn't where Blake Whitmore had ever imagined himself, but desperation had a way of breaking down barriers. After 3 sleepless nights of viral videos and death threats, after watching his family's company stock continue to plummet, he'd swallowed his pride and hired a private investigator to find the woman he'd wronged. Her name was Ava Thompson. 24 years old, 7 months pregnant, worked part-time at a local bookstore. No father listed on any documents. No husband, no family money to speak of. The kind of person who would normally be invisible to someone like Blake. The investigator had also provided her routine. Grocery shopping on Tuesdays, work on Wednesday through Friday, and prenatal appointments every Thursday at the free clinic on Maple Street. Blake sat in his BMW across from the clinic at 8:47 a.m., wrestling with his conscience. His father's ultimatum echoed in his head. Fix this, or you're out of the company. But beneath the external pressure, something else gnawed at him. The memory of her voice saying, I'll pray for you. The genuine sadness in her eyes, not for herself, but for him. At 9:15, he saw her. Ava walked slowly up the clinic steps, one hand on her back, the other clutching a worn purse. Even from a distance, Blake could see she was favoring her left side, where she'd hit the fountain because of him. His hands shook as he got out of the car. Inside the clinic's waiting room, Ava signed in for her appointment and settled into one of the uncomfortable plastic chairs. The room was crowded. Mothers with crying babies, elderly patients with worn expressions, teenagers who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Ava Thompson. She looked up to see Janet, her favorite nurse, approaching with a concerned expression. How are you feeling after what happened? I'm okay, Ava said automatically, though the soreness in her ribs suggested otherwise. Is Dr. Millionaire'S running on time today? She's actually running about 20 minutes behind. Mrs. Rodriguez's appointment is taking longer than expected. Janet's expression softened. Honey, I have to ask, have you considered pressing charges? What that man did? I just want to move forward, Ava interrupted gently. The baby's healthy. I'm healing. That's all that matters. Janet squeezed her shoulder and moved on to the next patient. Ava pulled out a worn paperback book and tried to lose herself in the story, but concentration eluded her. Every time someone entered the waiting room, she tensed, half expecting reporters or more confrontation. That's when Blake walked in. Ava's book slipped from her hands as she recognized him immediately. The expensive suit had been replaced with dark jeans and a simple button-down shirt, but those cold blue eyes were unmistakable. Several other patients looked up, and Ava heard whispered recognition rippling through the room. Blake approached the reception desk, his voice barely above a whisper. "Excuse me, I need to speak with Ava Thompson. It's important." The receptionist, a middle-aged woman with no patience for nonsense, looked him up and down. "Are you family?" "No, Blake's voice caught. "I'm the man who hurt her." The waiting room fell silent. Every eye was on them now. Ava felt her heart racing, fight-or-flight instinct screaming at her to run, but with her pregnant belly and the crowd between her and the door, she was trapped. "Ma'am," the receptionist called to Ava. "Do you want to speak with this gentleman?" Ava's first instinct was to say no, to have security escort him out. But something in his posture, the way his shoulders sagged, the genuine remorse in his eyes, gave her pause. "Here?" she asked. Blake looked around at the packed waiting room, at the phones already emerging to record another potential confrontation. Is there somewhere private?" The receptionist shook her head. "This is a medical facility, not a meeting hall." "It's okay," Ava said quietly, surprising herself. "He can sit down." Blake hesitated, then took the empty chair beside her. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Around them, other patients pretended not to listen while hanging on every word. "I don't know how to start," Blake said finally. "An apology would be traditional," Ava replied, her voice steady but guarded. Blake took a shaky breath. "I'm sorry. I'm so incredibly sorry for what I did, how I treated you. There's no excuse for—" "You're right," Ava interrupted. "There isn't." Blake flinched as if she'd slapped him. "I came here to make things right. I want to pay for your medical expenses, for anything you need." "You want to pay?" Ava's voice was flat. "Of course you do. That's how your world works, isn't it? Break something, write a check." "That's not— yes, I want to help financially. But what?" Ava turned to face him fully, and Blake was struck again by the intelligence in her dark eyes. "But you also want me to forgive you so you can sleep at night. So your daddy doesn't cut off your trust fund." The accuracy of her words made Blake wince. "I deserve that." "You deserve a lot worse than that," Ava said quietly. "Do you know what it's like to work 2 jobs while pregnant? To count every penny for groceries, to lie awake at night wondering if you can afford the hospital bill when your baby comes?" Blake shook his head, shame burning in his chest. "No, you don't." "And you know what the worst part is?" Ava's voice remained calm, but Blake could hear the pain underneath. "It wasn't the physical hurt. It was the way you looked at me. Like I was nothing. Like I didn't matter." "You do matter," Blake said urgently. "You matter, and I was wrong. And Thompson." Dr. Martinez appeared at the waiting room entrance. "Ava Thompson?" Ava started to stand, then winced as her ribs protested. Instinctively, Blake reached out to help her, but she pulled away. "I don't need your help," she said. But as she struggled to her feet, favoring her injured side, the baby's weight throwing off her balance, Blake saw the effort it cost her. He saw the pride that kept her from accepting assistance, and the pain she was hiding from everyone around her. "Ma'am," Dr. Martinez said, noticing Blake, "is everything all right?" Before Ava could answer, Blake spoke up. "Doctor, I'm the one who caused her injury. I need to know if she's okay, if the baby's okay." Dr. Martinez's expression hardened as recognition dawned. "You're the man from the video." The entire waiting room was listening now. Phones recording, whispers spreading. Blake felt exposed, vulnerable in a way he'd never experienced. "Yes," he said simply, "and I need to know what damage I've done." Ava looked at him with surprise, not at his presence, but at his willingness to claim responsibility so publicly, so completely. "Ava," Dr. Martinez said gently, "it's your choice." For a long moment, Ava studied Blake's face. She saw something there she hadn't expected, genuine remorse, real fear for her well-being. Not the calculated concern of someone trying to avoid a lawsuit, but human worry. "He can come," she said finally, "but he sits in the corner and doesn't say a word unless I ask him to." As they walked toward the examination room, Blake following at a respectful distance, neither of them realized they were taking the first step toward understanding each other in ways that would change both their lives forever. Sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones who end up teaching us the most about ourselves. Have you ever had an enemy become something more? What do you think will happen when Ava learns the truth about who Blake really is? Share your thoughts below. The examination room was cramped with 3 people in it. Blake pressed himself against the far wall as Dr. Martinez helped Ava onto the examination table, the paper crinkling beneath her. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows, making everyone look tired and older. "Let's check on both of you," Dr. Martinez said, pulling on latex gloves. "Ava, tell me about the pain levels since the incident." "It's manageable," Ava said, though Blake noticed how she unconsciously protected her left side. More soreness than sharp pain now. Dr. Martinez began her examination, pressing gently along Ava's ribs. Blake watched, guilt twisting in his stomach every time Ava winced. "No signs of internal bleeding," the doctor said, moving to prepare the ultrasound equipment. "Let's check on the baby." The room filled with the steady whoosh-whoosh of a heartbeat, strong and fast. Blake found himself holding his breath, a prayer he didn't know he believed in forming in his mind. "Please let them be okay. Please don't let me have hurt them." "Baby's heartbeat is perfect," Dr. Martinez smiled. "Strong and steady at 142 beats per minute. No signs of distress." Blake's knees nearly buckled with relief. "Thank God," he whispered. Ava turned to look at him, surprised by the raw emotion in his voice. For the first time since he'd walked into the clinic, she saw not the arrogant millionaire from the mall, but a young man carrying the weight of almost causing irreversible harm. Dr. Martinez continued the ultrasound, pointing out the baby's features on the fuzzy screen. "Everything looks perfect, Ava. Your little one is a fighter." "Just like her mama," Ava said softly, her hand moving to her belly. "Her?" Blake found himself asking. Ava nodded. "I'm having a daughter, going to name her Hope." The name hit Blake like a physical blow. Hope, in his world of cynicism and calculated moves. The idea of naming a child Hope seemed impossibly pure. "That's beautiful," he said quietly. Dr. Martinez finished the examination and helped Ava sit up. "I want to see you again next week, just to monitor the healing." "And Ava?" She paused, glancing at Blake. "You should consider documenting all of this. Medical records, photos of the bruising. Not necessarily for legal action, but for your protection." After the doctor left, Blake and Ava sat in uncomfortable silence. Finally, Blake spoke. "Why did you let me come in here?" Ava was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know," she admitted. "Maybe because you were the first person who's ever publicly taken responsibility for hurting me." "What do you mean?" Ava's fingers traced patterns on the examination table paper. "You want to know who I am? Really know?" Blake nodded. "I grew up in foster care, bounced between 7 different homes between ages 6 and 18. Her voice was matter-of-fact, but Blake heard the pain underneath. "You know what most people see when they look at me? A statistic. A problem to be managed. A burden." Blake felt something crack open in his chest.
"Ava,
I'm not finished." Her voice was firm, but not unkind. "The father of my baby, he was a law student at Georgetown. Charming, ambitious, talked about changing the world. When I told him I was pregnant, you know what he said?" Blake shook his head. He said, "I was trying to trap him. Offered to pay for an abortion, and never speak to me again. When I said no, he blocked my number and transferred schools." Ava's hand moved protectively over her belly. "So I've been doing this alone. Working at a bookstore that pays barely above minimum wage, living in a 1-bedroom apartment, saving every penny for when Hope arrives." The weight of her words settled over Blake like a heavy blanket. I had no idea. Of course you didn't. People like you don't see people like me unless we're in your way. But there was no malice in her voice now, just exhaustion. The thing is, Blake, and yes, I know your name now, I've spent my whole life having people look at me and decide I was worth less than them. Foster parents who saw a paycheck, teachers who saw a troublemaker, employers who saw expendable help, men who saw an easy target. Blake's hands clenched into fists. That's not, people shouldn't treat you that way. But they do, and you did too. Ava slid down from the examination table, moving carefully. The difference is, you came here today. You sat in a room full of people who hate you right now, and admitted what you did. That's not nothing. Blake stood as well, keeping his distance. It doesn't make up for what I did. No, it doesn't. Ava gathered her purse and the ultrasound photos. But it's a start. They walked back toward the waiting room together. Blake noticed how Ava moved, dignified despite her discomfort, graceful despite her circumstances. She carried herself like royalty, even in her thrift store clothes. Can I ask you something? Ava said as they reached the reception area. Anything. Why were you so angry that day? I mean, really, what happened before you got to the mall? Blake paused, caught off guard by the question. No one had asked him that, not his father, not the reporters, not even himself, really. He started, then stopped. I'd just come from the worst meeting of my life. My father basically told me I was a failure, that I might lose my place in the family business. I felt powerless, weak. So you found someone more powerless to hurt. The brutal honesty of it made Blake's stomach turn. Yes. God help me, yes. At least you can admit it. Ava pushed through the clinic doors, Blake following. Most people can't even do that. Outside, they paused on the sidewalk. The morning sun felt warm on their faces, a stark contrast to the fluorescent harshness inside. Ava, Blake said, I meant what I said about helping. Medical bills, lost wages, whatever you need. I can't take your money, Ava said firmly. Why not? She turned to face him fully. Because right now, you're trying to buy forgiveness. And forgiveness isn't for sale. It has to be earned. Blake felt like she'd seen straight through to his soul. Then how? How do I earn it? Ava studied his face for a long moment. I don't know if you can. But if you really want to try, she paused. There's a community center in my neighborhood. Riverside Community Center. They serve meals to homeless families every Saturday. They could use volunteers. You want me to volunteer? I want you to see what the world looks like for people who don't have trust funds and family businesses to fall back on. Maybe then you'll understand why what you did was so much more than just bumping into someone. Blake nodded slowly. Riverside Community Center. Saturdays. If you show up, Ava said, starting to walk away. Don't do it for the cameras or the good PR. Do it because you want to understand. As Blake watched her walk away, something his father had said echoed in his mind. Some things require you to actually be a better person. For the first time in his life, Blake wondered if he was capable of that kind of change. He pulled out his phone and typed Riverside Community Center into his GPS. It was time to find out who Blake Whitmore really was beneath all the privilege and pride. Neither of them knew that Ava's father was watching from across the street, having followed his daughter to make sure she was safe. Judge Marcus Thompson, one of the most powerful men in the city's judicial system, smiled grimly as he watched his daughter handle herself with the same grace and strength that had made him so proud of her. It was time, he decided, to have a conversation with the Whitmore family about consequences. Saturday morning at Riverside Community Center arrived gray and drizzly, the kind of weather that made everything feel heavier. Blake sat in his BMW for 10 minutes, staring at the modest brick building with its faded sign and overgrown parking lot. This wasn't his world. There were no valet services, no marble lobbies, no one to smooth his path. Through the windows, he could see people moving around inside, setting up tables and preparing food. Real people doing real work, not because they had to for appearances or networking, but because it mattered. He'd almost turned around 3 times on the drive here. What was he doing? Blake Whitmore didn't volunteer at community centers. He attended charity galas where he wrote checks and posed for photos with his father's business associates. But then he remembered Ava's words, "Do it because you want to understand." Taking a deep breath, Blake got out of the car and walked through the community center's front door. The smell hit him first, not unpleasant, but unfamiliar. The scent of industrial-grade cleaning supplies mixed with cooking food and the mustiness of an old building. The sounds were different too. Children laughing, volunteers calling to each other, the clatter of serving spoons against metal pans. "You lost, son?" A woman in her 60s with graying hair and kind eyes approached him. Her name tag read Dorothy Volunteer Coordinator. "I'm looking for Ava Thompson," Blake said. "She suggested I volunteer here." Dorothy's eyebrows rose in recognition. "You're the young man from the video." Blake's shoulders tensed, waiting for rejection or judgment. Instead, Dorothy nodded thoughtfully. "Well, if Ava sent you, that's good enough for me. Come on, let's get you an apron." Blake found Ava in the kitchen, wearing a faded green apron over her maternity clothes, carefully portioning mac and cheese into serving containers. She looked up when Dorothy brought him in, surprise flickering across her face. "I wasn't sure you'd actually come," she said. "Neither was I," Blake admitted honestly. Dorothy handed him an apron, bright yellow with "Kiss the Cook" emblazoned across the front. Blake stared at it like it might bite him. "Something wrong with it?" Ava asked, and Blake caught the hint of amusement in her voice. I don't really cook." "Good thing we're just serving today then." Ava gestured to the stack of containers. "Think you can handle putting food on plates?" For the next hour, Blake learned what real work felt like. His manicured hands got sticky from spilled juice boxes. His expensive shoes got scuffed from the concrete floor. His back ached from bending over serving tables designed for people shorter than his 6'2" frame. But something else happened too. He watched Ava work, how she remembered the names of the children who came through the line, how she slipped extra bread rolls to the mothers who looked particularly tired, how she made every person feel seen and valued. "Mrs. Rodriguez, how's your son doing in school?" Ava asked an elderly woman. "Better, Misha. He got a B on his math test this week." "That's wonderful. Tell him Miss Ava is proud of him." Blake watched this interaction, then tried to copy it with the next person in line, a man about his father's age wearing a worn coat. How are you today?" Blake asked awkwardly. The man looked surprised to be addressed directly. "I'm doing all right, son. Thank you for asking." Blake served him generous portions, and the man smiled gratefully before moving on. "That was better," Ava said quietly. "Better than what?" "Better than pretending these people are invisible." During their lunch break, they sat together on the loading dock behind the building. Ava had brought her a peanut butter sandwich. Blake had offered to buy lunch from the deli across the street, but she'd declined. "Why do you do this?" Blake asked, watching her eat her simple meal with obvious contentment. "Do what?" "Come here every Saturday. Work with people who don't have much." Ava was quiet for a moment. "When I was in foster care, there was a woman who volunteered at one of the group homes, Miss Patricia. Every week, she'd come and read stories to us kids. She didn't have to. She had her own family, her own problems, but she showed up." "What happened to her?" "I don't know. I aged out of that home when I was 14. But I'll never forget how she made me feel, like I was worth someone's time, like I mattered." Ava took another bite of her sandwich. "I guess I hope I can be someone's Miss Patricia." Blake felt something shift inside his chest. "And I'm someone who makes people feel like they don't matter." "You were," Ava corrected gently. "But people can change. The question is whether you want to." After lunch, they were assigned to the children's activity area. Blake watched Ava settle into a child-sized chair, her pregnant belly making the simple action challenging, and begin reading a story to a group of 5- and 6-year-olds. Once upon a time, she began. There was a little girl who lived in a castle made of clouds. Blake found himself listening as intently as the children. Ava's voice was warm and animated. bringing the story to life with different voices for each character. The children hung on every word, their faces bright with wonder. "Miss Ava, what happened to the Cloud Princess?" a little girl with pigtails asked. "Well, she learned that the most beautiful castles aren't made of clouds or gold or diamonds," Ava said, her eyes meeting Blake's briefly. "They're made of kindness and love, and the people who care about you." When Storytime ended, a boy about 6 years old tugged on Blake's sleeve. "Mister, do you know any stories?" Blake panicked. I don't really know any children's stories." "Tell them about something you did as a kid," Ava suggested. Blake thought for a moment, then sat down in another tiny chair, looking ridiculous, but somehow not caring anymore. "When I was 7, he began, I had a dog named Charlie. He was this huge golden retriever who was afraid of butterflies." The children giggled as Blake described Charlie's epic battles with the butterfly population of the Whitmore estate. As he talked, he found himself remembering not the loneliness of his privileged childhood, but the genuine joy he'd felt with that dog, before boarding schools and business expectations had hardened his heart. When the story ended, the same little girl who'd asked about the Cloud Princess climbed into his lap. "I liked your story, mister. It was funny." Blake felt tears threaten his eyes. When was the last time someone had climbed into his lap? When was the last time he'd made someone laugh without mockery or sarcasm? "Thank you," he whispered. Later, as they were cleaning up, Ava watched Blake carefully stack the tiny chairs. "You're different here," she observed. "Different how?" "Gentler, more human." Blake paused in his chair stacking. "I feel different. I feel like," he struggled for the words, "like maybe I could be someone worth knowing." "You are someone worth knowing," Ava said. "You always were. You just forgot for a while." As they walked to the parking lot together, Blake felt something he hadn't experienced in years, genuine contentment. Not the hollow satisfaction of a business deal or the temporary pleasure of expensive toys, but real peace. "Ava," he said as they reached his car, "thank you for giving me a chance to see." "Thank you for showing up," she replied. "Same time next week?" Blake nodded. "Same time next week." As he drove home, Blake realized that for the first time since the mall incident, he wasn't thinking about damage control or public relations. He was thinking about the little girl who'd liked his story, and the way Ava had looked when she was reading to the children, like she was exactly where she belonged. He was starting to understand what she meant about earning forgiveness. It wasn't about grand gestures or expensive gifts. It was about showing up consistently, authentically, for something bigger than himself. But neither Blake nor Ava knew that their growing connection was about to be tested in ways neither of them could imagine. 3 weeks had passed since Blake's first day at the community center. 3 weeks of Saturday volunteering, of careful conversations, of something fragile and unexpected growing between him and Ava. Blake found himself looking forward to those Saturdays more than any business meeting or social event. For the first time in his life, he felt like he was doing something that mattered. That's why the ambush hit him like a physical blow. Blake was leaving his downtown office on a Thursday evening when the black sedan pulled up beside him. 2 men in expensive suits got out. Not his father's usual lawyers, but someone else's. Someone with power. "Mr. Whitmore." The older of the 2 men approached, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "I'm Judge Marcus Thompson. I believe you know my daughter." Blake's blood turned to ice. Judge Thompson, one of the most respected and feared judges in the city. Ava's father. "Sir, Get in the car," Judge Thompson said quietly. "We need to talk." It wasn't a request. The sedan drove through the city, in tense silence. Blake sat across from Judge Thompson, studying the man who had raised Ava. He could see the resemblance now, the same intelligent dark eyes, the same dignified bearing. But where Ava carried warmth, her father radiated cold authority. "You're wondering why I'm here," Judge Thompson said finally. "Yes, sir. I've been watching you, Mr. Whitmore, watching you with my daughter. Do you think I don't know about your little volunteer sessions? Your attempts at redemption?" Blake's throat felt dry. "Sir, Whatever you think. I think you're a spoiled rich boy who hurt my daughter and is now trying to manipulate his way back into her good graces. Judge Thompson's voice remained level, but Blake could feel the fury underneath. I think you see a vulnerable pregnant woman and believe you can use her forgiveness to rehabilitate your image. That's not what this is. Isn't it? Judge Thompson leaned forward. Tell me, Mr. Whitmore, what happens when the cameras stop rolling? When the public moves on to the next scandal? Do you think you'll still be volunteering at community centers then? Blake wanted to protest, to explain that the past 3 weeks had changed him, that he genuinely cared about Ava and the work they were doing. But under Judge Thompson's withering stare, his words died in his throat. I have the power to destroy your family's business, Judge Thompson continued. The casino project your father is so desperate to push through. It needs approval from 3 different city departments. I have influence with all of them. Your real estate developments downtown? They depend on zoning variances that cross my desk regularly. Sir, please. But I'm not going to do that. You know why? Blake shook his head. Because my daughter asked me not to. Because despite everything you've done, despite the pain you've caused her, she believes you might be capable of change. Judge Thompson's voice softened slightly. She has always seen the best in people, even when they don't deserve it. The car pulled up outside an upscale restaurant, the kind of place where Blake normally felt comfortable. Tonight, it felt like foreign territory. We're going inside, Judge Thompson said. There are some people I want you to meet. The private dining room contained a dozen people Blake didn't recognize, men and women of various ages, all well-dressed, all watching him with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. Ladies and gentlemen, Judge Thompson announced, this is Blake Whitmore. The reaction was immediate. Murmurs of recognition, a few sharp intakes of breath. One woman who actually gasped and covered her mouth. These are some of the most successful African-American business leaders in our city, Judge Thompson said, gesturing to the assembled group, the very people your father needs as partners for his casino project. Blake felt like he was drowning. This wasn't a meeting. It was a tribunal. Mr. Whitmore, a woman in her 50s, spoke up. I'm Dr. Patricia Williams, CEO of Riverside Medical Group. Your family's insurance company handles our employee health plans. After seeing that video of you attacking a pregnant woman, I'm reconsidering our partnership. Ma'am, I'm not finished, Dr. Williams continued. That woman you assaulted, she could have been my daughter, my sister, me 30 years ago. Do you understand that? Blake nodded mutely. Another man spoke up. Michael Johnson, Johnson Construction. We've done work for Whitmore Development in the past, but I can't in good conscience partner with a company whose heir thinks it's acceptable to brutalize pregnant women. One by one they spoke. Each voice was another nail in the coffin of his family's business relationships, another bridge burned by his moment of cruelty. But worse than the business implications was the human cost. Blake saw the real pain in their faces, the way his actions had reopened old wounds of discrimination and injustice. The question is, Judge Thompson said, after everyone had spoken, what are you going to do about it? Blake looked around the room at all the expectant faces. 3 weeks ago, he would have fumbled through some corporate apology, maybe offered to write checks to their favorite charities. But something had changed in him during those Saturdays at the community center. I don't know, he said honestly. I don't know how to fix what I've broken. I can't undo what I did. I can't take back the pain I caused. All I can do is try to be better going forward. That's not enough, Dr. Williams said sharply. I know it's not, Blake agreed, but it's all I have. Judge Thompson studied him for a long moment. My daughter thinks you're worth saving. I'm not convinced, but I'm willing to make you a deal. Blake waited. Stop seeing her. The words hit Blake like a sledgehammer. What? Stay away from my daughter. Stop your little volunteer charade. Disappear from her life. Do that, and I'll use my influence to help repair your family's business relationships. Your father's casino project will move forward. Your company will survive. Blake felt the room spinning. And if I don't? Then I make sure the Whitmore name becomes synonymous with racism and cruelty. Your business partnerships crumble. Your father's legacy dies with you. Blake stared at Judge Thompson, understanding the impossible choice being laid before him. Save his family's empire by abandoning the one person who had shown him what it meant to be truly human, or risk everything to protect a relationship that might not even be real. She doesn't even know I'm her father, Judge Thompson added quietly. I gave her up for adoption when I was 17, too young and too poor to raise her properly. I've watched from a distance her whole life, making sure she was safe, helping when I could without her knowing. That girl is everything good in this world, and I won't let you use her kindness to save yourself. The revelation hit Blake like another physical blow. Ava didn't know her father was one of the most powerful men in the city. She thought she was alone in the world. 24 hours, Judge Thompson said, standing. Make your choice. My daughter's peace of mind, or your family's fortune. As Blake sat alone in the empty dining room after everyone had left, he realized that everything he thought he'd built with Ava, every moment of connection, every shared smile at the community center, was about to crumble. And the worst part was, he wasn't sure Judge Thompson was wrong. Maybe he was just a spoiled rich boy trying to buy redemption. Maybe Ava deserved better than someone who had to be blackmailed into doing the right thing. Blake pulled out his phone and stared at Ava's number. Tomorrow was Saturday. She'd be expecting him at the community center, ready to read stories to children and serve food to families in need. But Judge Thompson's words echoed in his head. Stop seeing her. Stay away from my daughter. For the first time since that terrible day at the mall, Blake felt truly lost, and this time there was no easy answer waiting for him. If you're heartbroken that Blake just threw away real love, please subscribe so stories like this reach people who need to hear them. Don't let this message get lost. Blake didn't sleep that night. He sat in his penthouse apartment, staring out at the city lights, Judge Thompson's ultimatum echoing in his mind like a broken record. 24 hours to choose between his family's empire and the woman who had shown him what it meant to be human. At 3 a.m., he found himself looking through his phone at pictures from the community center, candid shots Dorothy had taken of volunteers in action. There was one of him and Ava reading to the children together, both of them laughing at something one of the kids had said. He looked genuinely happy in that photo. When was the last time he'd looked genuinely happy about anything? His father called at 6 a.m. Blake, we need to talk. Judge Thompson contacted me last night. Blake's stomach dropped. Dad, I can explain. Explain what? That you've been secretly courting the daughter of one of the most powerful judges in the state. That our entire casino project is now hanging by a thread because you can't stay away from the woman you assaulted. I didn't know who her father was. It doesn't matter. Richard's voice exploded through the phone. What matters is that you fix this. Now. Today. Before everything we've built crumbles. The line went dead. Blake stared at his phone, understanding that he was truly alone in this decision. His father had made his priorities clear. Business first, always. Saturday morning arrived gray and cold. Blake sat in his car outside the community center, watching through the windows as volunteers set up for the day. He could see Ava inside, moving slowly but purposefully, her pregnancy now clearly visible even from a distance. He'd made his decision somewhere around dawn, but sitting here now, watching her work, his resolve wavered. His phone buzzed. A text from Judge Thompson. Your choice, Mr. Whitmore. My daughter's phone number changes at noon today. This is your last chance to walk away cleanly. Blake got out of the car and walked inside. Ava looked up as he entered, a smile lighting up her face. You're late. I was starting to worry you'd changed your mind about us troublemakers. The casual warmth in her voice nearly broke his heart. Ava, we need to talk. Something in his tone made her smile fade. What's wrong? Blake looked around the bustling community center, at Dorothy organizing volunteers, at the families already starting to line up for lunch, at the children playing in the corner. This place had become sacred to him in just 3 weeks. These people had become his people. Outside, he said quietly. They walked to the loading dock where they'd shared so many lunch breaks. The December air was sharp and cold, and Blake noticed Ava pull her thin coat tighter around herself. "Blake, you're scaring me. What's going on?" Blake took a deep breath, looking anywhere but at her face. "I can't do this anymore." "Do what?" "This. Us. The volunteering. The friendship. I can't keep coming here." The silence stretched between them like a chasm. When Blake finally looked at Ava, her face was a mask of carefully controlled pain. "I see," she said quietly. "Did your father finally put his foot down? Tell you that charity work wasn't good for the family image?" Blake wanted to tell her the truth, about Judge Thompson, about the ultimatum, about the impossible choice he'd been forced to make. But he couldn't. If he told her about her father, about the power he wielded, it would shatter her understanding of her own life. "Something like that," he said, hating himself for the lie. Ava nodded slowly. "I should have expected this. People like you don't really change, do you? You just play at being better until it becomes inconvenient." "That's not, isn't it?" Ava's voice was steady, but Blake could see tears gathering in her eyes. 3 weeks of volunteering, and you think you've paid your debt? 3 weeks of reading to children, and you've earned your redemption. Ava, please. No. She stepped back from him. "I defended you, Blake, when people said you were just manipulating me for good PR. I defended you. I told them you were changing, that you were learning what it meant to care about something bigger than yourself." Blake felt like he was bleeding internally. Every word she spoke was true, and worse than true. It revealed how much faith she'd had in him, faith he was now destroying. "I was wrong," she continued. "You're exactly who I thought you were that first day. Cruel, selfish, and so trapped in your privilege that you can't see past your own needs. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." Ava's voice broke slightly. "I understand that I'm convenient when you need to feel good about yourself, and inconvenient when your real life calls. I understand that I was stupid enough to believe that someone like you could actually care about someone like me." Blake reached for her, but she stepped away. Don't you dare touch me. Don't you dare pretend this hurts you as much as it hurts me." But it did hurt him. It was agony. Blake realized that somewhere in the past 3 weeks, he'd fallen in love, not just with Ava, but with the person he was when he was with her. The person who read stories to children and served food to homeless families, and felt like his life had meaning beyond quarterly reports and stock prices. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "So am I," Ava said. "I'm sorry I wasted my time believing in you." She walked back toward the community center, then paused at the door. "For what it's worth," she said without turning around, "the person you were pretending to be these past weeks, he was someone worth knowing. It's a shame he was never real." Blake stood alone on the loading dock as Ava disappeared inside. Through the windows he could see her returning to work, putting on her apron, forcing a smile for the other volunteers. He could see Dorothy approaching her with concern, probably asking where he was. His phone buzzed, another text from Judge Thompson. "Good choice. Your father's casino project will proceed as planned." Blake stared at the message, then at the community center where the woman he loved was moving on without him. He'd made the practical choice, the business-smart choice, the choice that protected his family's interests. So why did it feel like he'd just destroyed the only good thing in his life? He walked back to his car, past the families waiting in line for lunch, past the children who would ask where Mr. Blake was today, past Dorothy who had welcomed him, despite knowing exactly who he was. As he drove away from Riverside Community Center for what he believed was the last time, Blake didn't know that Ava was watching from the window, tears streaming down her face. He didn't know that she was questioning everything she thought she knew about love and trust and second chances. And he had no idea that Judge Thompson was about to discover that sometimes protecting the people we love requires us to trust them with the truth, even when that truth might break their hearts. The choice had been made, but its consequences were just beginning to unfold. 2 weeks had passed since Blake walked away from the community center, and the world felt gray and hollow. He'd thrown himself into work, helping his father finalize the casino project that Judge Thompson's influence had salvaged. The Whitmore empire was secure, their business relationships restored. By every measure that had once mattered to him, Blake should have felt triumphant. Instead, he felt empty. He was in his office on a Tuesday evening, staring at architectural plans he couldn't focus on, when his assistant buzzed in. "Mr. Whitmore, there's a Judge Thompson here to see you. He says it's urgent." Blake's blood ran cold. Had he done something wrong? Violated some term of their agreement? Judge Thompson entered looking haggard. His usually perfect composure cracked around the edges. "She's in labor," he said without preamble. Blake shot to his feet. "What?" "Ava. She went into labor this morning, 3 weeks early. There were complications." Judge Thompson's voice was strained. "She's at Riverside Medical Center." "Why are you telling me this?" Blake asked, though his heart was already racing. "Because she's asking for you." Judge Thompson sank into a chair, suddenly looking every one of his 63 years. "She's been asking for you since the contractions started." Blake felt the room spin. "But you said—" "I know what I said. I was wrong." Judge Thompson looked up at him with eyes full of regret. "I told her, Blake, about me being her father. About the ultimatum I gave you." Blake's knees nearly buckled. "You told her?" "She deserved the truth. And when I saw her reaction, when I saw how much losing you had hurt her," Judge Thompson's voice broke, "I realized I'd become the very thing I was trying to protect her from. A powerful man making decisions about her life without her consent." "How did she react to learning about you?" Judge Thompson smiled sadly. "She said she'd always felt like someone was watching over her, making sure she was okay. She'd wondered who was paying for her medical bills when she couldn't afford them, who had made sure she always got into the better foster homes. She said she'd hoped it was someone who cared." Blake sank into his chair, overwhelmed. "And about me? About what I did?" "She said you were an idiot for thinking her love was something that could be bargained away." Judge Thompson leaned forward. "Blake, I need you to understand something. My daughter has spent her whole life having other people make decisions for her. Foster parents, caseworkers, teachers who didn't believe in her potential. The one thing she's never had is someone who chose her freely, without obligation or coercion. But I did choose her. I was falling in love with her." "Then why aren't you at the hospital right now?" Blake had never driven so fast in his life. He abandoned his BMW in the hospital's emergency lane and ran through the corridors, still in his expensive suit, but not caring about anything except getting to Ava. He found Judge Thompson in the waiting area outside the maternity ward, pacing like a caged animal. "How is she?" Blake gasped, out of breath. "Still in labor. The baby's heartbeat dropped earlier. But it's stable now." Judge Thompson looked at him. "Blake, before you go in there, you need to know something. She might not forgive you. What you did walking away like that, it broke something in her." Blake nodded, understanding. "I have to try." Room 314. "But Blake?" Judge Thompson caught his arm. "If you're going to leave again, leave now. Don't you dare give her hope and then disappear when things get complicated." Blake met his eyes. "I'm not going anywhere. Not ever again." Room 314 was dimly lit, filled with the quiet beeping of monitors. Eva lay in the hospital bed, her hair damp with sweat, her face pale but determined. She looked up as Blake entered, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. "You came," she said finally. "Your father told me you were asking for me." "My father?" Ava laughed shakily. "Judge Marcus Thompson. I should have seen the resemblance. We have the same stubborn streak." Blake approached the bed slowly. "Ava, I'm so sorry. About everything. About leaving. About lying to you. About why—" "I know why you left," she interrupted. "And I know you thought you were protecting me. But Blake, I've had people make decisions for me my whole life. I never thought you'd be one of them." Another contraction hit, and Blake watched helplessly as Ava gripped the bed rails, breathing through the pain. Can I stay?" he asked when it passed. Ava studied his face for a long moment. "Why?" So you can feel better about yourself. So you can tell people you were there when I had my baby. No. Blake sat carefully on the edge of the chair beside her bed. Because I love you. Because I've spent 2 weeks realizing that nothing in my life means anything without you in it. Because I want to meet your daughter and tell her stories about butterflies and help you raise her to be as incredible as her mother. Tears spilled down Ava's cheeks. You love me? I love everything about you. Your strength, your grace, the way you see the best in people, even when they don't deserve it. I love the way you read stories to children, and the way you make everyone around you feel like they matter. Blake's voice broke. I love that you taught me what it means to be human. Another contraction, stronger this time. Blake reached for Ava's hand, and this time she let him take it. I love you too, she whispered when the pain passed. That's why it hurt so much when you left. I'll never leave again, Blake promised. Not unless you ask me to. What about your father? Your family's business? Blake squeezed her hand. My father will have to learn to love me for who I am, not who he wants me to be. And if he can't, well, then maybe it's time I built something of my own. Hope Ava Thompson was born at 11:47 p.m., weighing 5 pounds, 3 ounces, with her mother's dark eyes and a powerful set of lungs that announced her arrival to the entire maternity ward. Blake cried when the doctor placed her in Ava's arms, overwhelmed by the miracle of new life and the woman who had given it. She's perfect, he whispered, touching the baby's tiny hand with one finger. Do you want to hold her? Ava asked. Blake had never held a newborn before, but as Hope settled into his arms, something clicked into place. This was his family, not bound by blood or obligation, but by choice and love and the promise of tomorrow. Judge Thompson appeared in the doorway, tears in his eyes as he saw his daughter and granddaughter for the first time together. Come meet your granddaughter, Ava called to him. As the 3 adults gathered around the tiny baby, Blake realized that families weren't built on wealth or status or perfect circumstances. They were built on forgiveness and second chances, and the courage to love despite the risk of being hurt. Blake, Ava said softly, I have something to ask you. Anything. Hope is going to need a father figure. Someone to teach her about standing up for what's right, about second chances, about how people can change. Ava looked up at him. Think you're up for the job? Blake kissed her forehead gently. For the rest of my life. Outside the hospital window, dawn was breaking over the city, painting the sky in shades of hope and new beginnings. The millionaire's son who had once kicked a pregnant woman out of cruelty and ignorance was gone. In his place was a man who had learned that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars, but in love freely given and received. And as little Hope Thompson slept peacefully in her mother's arms, surrounded by a grandfather who had watched over her from shadows and a man who would love her as his own, the future stretched ahead bright with possibility. Sometimes, Blake thought, the most beautiful endings come from the most broken beginnings. Sometimes, love really does conquer all. What did you think of Blake and Ava's journey? Have you ever experienced a moment that completely changed your perspective on someone? Sometimes the people who hurt us most can become the ones who love us best. Share your thoughts on second chances and unexpected love in the comments below. I'd love to hear your own stories of transformation and forgiveness.
The end. This story reminds us that everyone deserves a second chance to become who they were meant to be, and that love has the power to transform even the hardest hearts. Sometimes our greatest mistakes lead us to our greatest blessings. If this story of unexpected love touched your heart, you'll absolutely fall in love with tomorrow's tale. It's even more emotional and life-changing than you can imagine. A story that will leave you believing in miracles again. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one. Thank you for staying with Blake and Ava's beautiful journey to the very end.